Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Conversations on Conversations. I'm your host, Sarah Noll Wilson, and today, my friends, we have a very special episode. This is episode number 80. And not only is it the number 80, it's going to be our last episode of 2023. Yep, we're going to take a little bit of a break, but we'll say more about that at the end of the episode. So to wrap up our year, we're doing something a little different. You know, I've mentioned at the end of our close that there's a whole team that makes this show possible. And so a couple of our colleagues, family members, spouses, you know, they wear multiple hats, are joining me. And because we all listen to these episodes multiple times and have lots of conversations between us of, oh, that was such a good point, or wow, that one really resonated. So without further ado, we're going to do a year in review. What were some of the key highlights that stuck with us, that changed us, that changed our thinking? And we want to invite you to do the same and let us know. So, okay, some of you already know Nick Wilson. Nick Wilson, now I have to do the bios. Nick Wilson is a freelance videographer, animator, editor, artist. He is the father to our dog, Sally. He is my husband and video producer, father to our dog. It was good.
I am her father.
We're off to a good start. He is our podcast producer. He is the person who takes care of our guest. He is the one that makes sure that the show is moving along and that I'm not getting too far off track. Welcome to the show, Nick Wilson.
Thanks, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and joining us for the first time is our sound editor, Drew Noll. Drew Noll has years of experience as a UX designer. He is also an award-winning sound designer. Is that like... I felt like I was saying designer twice. You are award-winning. He is a fantastic musician, has an incredible ear for all things. He's the reason that the podcast sounds as good as it does. And when things don't go right, makes it as good as we can, given this technology. He also moonlights as my brother. Welcome to the show, Drew Noll.
It's a pleasure to be here, twin sister Sarah.
Aww. Welcome. Okay, since it's the first time that we've done this, what else should people know about you, Drew? Yeah, I get to ask you the questions that you've heard me ask 80, 79. Yeah.
Yeah. Midwest born and raised, married to a wonderful family. I've got an awesome son. I've got a great, super smart dog that is just a great staple in the family. I like to hang out outside, and yeah, I just like all things sound. And I have a really wonderful family too.
You do. Yeah. We're pretty great. I mean, you have to say that.
Pretty great.
Because we're here. Nick, anything else you want people to know about you before we jump into this?
I don't think so. I think people know plenty through context. Regular listeners know probably
regular listeners know about you. And, you know, and Nick and I, we recorded an episode last year where we talked about our mental health journeys and being spouses and support for each other. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I definitely recommend checking that out, just because we had a real conversation about some real tough times that we've navigated. Okay, so here's how this is going to work, folks. Each of us have taken some time to think about what were some of the key highlights from the guests. Now, I want to be very clear. Every single show that we air adds value. Every single guest that we have brought on because they were somebody who we've already been impacted by. We've seen the impact that they've created in the world. We are also focusing just on this year. We didn't open it up, which I didn't realize it was 80. We could have opened it. Well, we probably will. I mean, we'll just see where it goes. But I want to make sure that nobody feels like, oh, they didn't mention me. It wasn't that it wasn't valuable or a great episode. It just, for purposes. No,
I think I picked only the best ones. And I think if any of our past guests are listening and you're not mentioned, boy, know that you really blew it.
Way to create some safety. Way to just give the impression you're a real piece of work, Nick.
I know.
So not you.
No, I kid.
Funny.
I kid.
No, what was funny is when we started this, we were like, just pick your top 3. Nick, how many did you pull?
I mean, on the list that's in front of me, I have 9. I have 9 listed.
Drew, how many did you pull?
12, maybe 13.
I'm
like 7 and just plenty more that I'm sure will come up.
Yeah,
so
there's way more. There's way more than we can. I mean, talk about in one episode.
Oh,
and they all have some amazing takeaways. So it was hard to. It's hard. I still don't know which ones I'm gonna talk about because I've just got my list here. I'm gonna pick and choose as we go.
One of the things I just want to say to our listeners is that the intention of this isn't just to hear us, but from a learning perspective, as my colleague, Dr. Teresa Peterson would say, one of the greatest ways we can reinforce learning is to think about how our thinking has changed. And so the goal is in us doing this, not only will we reinforce the learning for ourselves, but also be able to maybe inspire you to think about how has your thinking changed? What are you doing differently because of listening to some of these really incredible guests that we've been able to have over the last 2 years? And also just to normalize, like, your thinking will change. People will push it. Maybe they'll say something and you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Or that was, made me uncomfortable. And now I have to interrogate that. Okay. So without further ado, who wants to go first? How about number 12? Let's start with the you need to have a baker's dozen, like add a 13 on there and then we'll just.
Episode 80 is pretty great. So I'll make that 13.
I just want to do a shout out.
Super good guest on that one. I think I'm just going to go right to it. 44 or 45.
Oh gosh, you have numbers. Okay, good. Okay.
T. Maxine, Woods Macmillan.
Oh yeah.
Really, really great. And that's all of that. And I was like comically taking notes and turning the pages and writing notes as much as possible. Like I really digested a lot from that one. And there was one line in particular that really, stood out. And this is kind of a common phrase. I think other ways of saying it too, but the line that is that we can't let the people who know the least about us have the most power over us. And that's such an easy concept, right? And there's the whole rent-free phrase that's out there too. But to really give it a definition of those people or those situations or those events that know the least about you, and it's really good. And to dig deeper into that, it's really to know there's a step of a self-exploration too that happens. So well, I don't know. I need to know who I am, right? I need to be the person who knows the most about me. So there's a lot of self-reflection too that goes along with that, and having the courage to do that. And sometimes that's not easy to do. And then you do, and then you sort of have that armor or that power or that to let some of those things go or to give them less weight on us. So that was a pretty big one this year for me. She's on my list too, but for something else. She was
I feel like we need to have just a little Maxine, all
right,
just
Maxine
go
Woods
through
Macmillan.
all the highlights of Maxine. Cause I had a couple different things because she made multiple appearances this year.
She has. Yeah, I did. She was one of our first trifers.
I don't think trifers is anything.
It's not a word. She's the first person to be on the show 3 times. I like trifers, like 2-fers.
Yeah, you could. You could take that one. You could coin that.
I love it because she's gonna hate listening to this, and she's gonna be like, "You were lying, Sarah." And so, Maxine Woods Macmillan, will you just sit here and listen and just receive all the flowers you deserve? That particularly feels resonant, right? Just navigating some of the challenges I know you're navigating with the little one, and is such a good reminder. And it is easy to be like, well, don't let other people, but sometimes you just need to hear it a different way to go. I had forgotten she had said that. And then as soon as you repeated it, it was like, oh, right. When do I let the people who don't know me impact me? What comes up for you, Nick?
Yeah, same. I had kind of forgotten that quote particularly, but I had a whole list of other Maxine nuggets on my list. The one that had come to mind most readily because it was more recent when her most recent appearance, when she talked about interrogating your thinking and the idea of just as I mean, it's such a valuable skill for any of us, like in any situation, like the ability to question pause and think about, like, why do I think this thing that I think? Why do I believe the things that I believe? And then beyond that, the idea that she had talked about, who benefits from me believing this, or who benefits from me, I remember she had talked about, reading a story or getting information from a certain whatever source. Right. It's like, think about, again, interrogate, like, where is this coming from? Who stands to benefit from me thinking this way? It's just, I thought it was a tremendous, it's just again, it applies in like every situation. It's such a like core, like ability for people to have, especially like going into the future of like, bizarre AI, deepfake, misinformation, whatever is going to be coming our way in the next however many years. Like the ability to discern, what the sources are, how you're getting that information, where is it coming from, why does someone want me to think or believe this is true? It's very powerful.
Yeah, that came up in the episode when we were talking about like the whole work from home versus return to the office, and just like, when articles are written about like people hate working from home, like who is that written by and for? It's interesting, like there's something about hearing you share that one, that something new came up for me, which is not only interrogating your thinking and interrogating who benefits from it. It's also interesting to think about, as somebody who creates content, what am I creating, and who is benefiting from what I'm creating, and are the right people benefiting from it, right? So like, and just reflecting on my journey of, I write from a very like my lived experience of being a white person, a white woman, from working with largely white audiences. And like, you think, oh yeah, no, I want this to benefit everyone, and realizing like it doesn't always, because it's coming from like, it was just interesting. There was something about how you were talking, Nick, that made me have a moment of like, not only reflecting on who's the benefit for, but also thinking, when you're creating content, who are you actually trying to benefit? Like, and not who do you want to benefit, but who are you actually benefiting in this situation? Yeah,
and the word of the interrogation too, just to throw on the end of that, because she's really good about the words that she uses, and so like the interrogation part is like, you need to be, or I don't know about need, but like if this is a journey that you are willing to explore, that there's a tenacity to it, right? So there's like there's an active participation in the inbound and outbound of your relationship with information, or how you're processing things or saying things. So it takes work.
It's more than just.
So it's not passive by any means.
Yeah. Because like reflection is like, well, and interrogating is also like looking for the cracks. It's like looking for the spaces that you're not normally seeing. It's interesting because I didn't realize she's who I got that language from. Because I use that now in my work quite a bit. Like, let's like interrogate, like, what role are you playing? And I actually just today had the thought of, when did that shift for me? And now I know. Just another one to add to the Maxine pile. Okay, like speaking of that episode, let's go down to when I asked her, what questions would you want leaders to think about? And she had two, but one was particularly like, would you live the life you're asking your team members to live?
Oh man, that is a good one.
Was such a moment. And I've actually used that with clients who are like, I don't know why people wouldn't want to work in customer care. I don't know why, or whatever the case is. And then it's just like, well, my friend T. Maxine Woods McMillan, she would ask this question. So how would you answer that? And if the answer is, and now some people I know, I had somebody who pushed back on me. They're like, that's not a fair question. And I was like, some part of it is fair. Like some part of it is like, yeah, I understand you've worked for 30 years. You don't expect to be making the same kind of salary, but like, would you be okay with the lifestyle that you're asking your team members to live? And if not, again, interrogate that. I have one more, Maxine, because this is the one that I really wanted to say.
But
Do you?
I don't know if
you
it's
go.
hers or not.
My God, is this just going to be us talking about her?
Yeah,
I've got a great
probably.
list. God, I can't wait to send her a message. She's going to be like, shut up, stop it, you're lying.
And correct me
like,
if I'm
we're
wrong.
not.
If I had to put money on it, it's probably hers. But and it was one of the more recent episodes that I feel like the phrase was it was observing leadership versus management, and the culture of like influence and impact. And the statement was, if you didn't have the influence or the impact that comes with positional power, would you still be a leader?
That was Chris.
Oh, was it Chris?
That was Chris Wildermuth. Yeah.
That's blown my mind, and I've shared that with so many people, and that I've said that to some people, and then they've gotten real quiet, which is like, all right, cool.
That was Dr. Chris Wildermuth, and the reason I know that so definitively is because she shared that with Teresa and I when we were not recording, and it completely we use that in our work all the time. Yeah, like if you didn't have the formal authority, would people follow you? And it's just like and if the answer is no, interrogate that. I
could talk about Chris too for a whole 5 hours probably. That's another one. Chris is great.
She is. She's so great. Well, and and that idea of kind of tagging onto that, we talked about that. Yeah, that idea of it was like authority versus leadership versus followership, and how we don't talk enough about followership, and or even just the simple question, why should people follow you? Right. She's the one who gave, and I don't know if this came up in the podcast, or I think it may have, but just that idea of leadership is inspiring people without coercion.
Yeah.
That last part is real. It's real interesting to think about that, not just in the workplace, but also with family, with your kids, with your spouse. Am I inspiring somebody to take action without coercing them, whether it's because of humiliation, shame, guilt, whatever the case might be? Yeah.
That's really good. That changed my approach at work. And, I don't know if I have specific examples of it, but I leaned on the side of maybe I am either intentionally or unintentionally coercing somebody or a group of people at a certain level. And so it's, taking a step back and really putting that word onto it and processing things and being more intentional about the words and the impact. And then I'll bring that up in another example that I have for another guest, but yes. Good.
Well, that's such a good, just like we were teasing out Maxine's use of interrogate. Coercion has heat to it, and then when you go, no, I don't do that. You sure? And it's not a question of not doing it. It's like, when do I do that? How do I do that?
And then why? And
then why? Yeah, geez. And why do I do that? And you're like, because I just want people to do what I say. Oh, okay. Okay. There we go. Let's explore that. Okay, wait, I have to go back real quickly to Maxine's, because there's just one that I have to share that I was such a fundamental shift.
A T Maxine mug. I don't.
Is when she called me out. She said, you keep talking about avoidance like it's something you just set aside. And then she laid the gem in our first episode with her this year. You don't avoid conflict. You just replace or reposition it. You replace it with you reposition it internally. You shift it to someone else. It doesn't it doesn't go away. And this didn't make it onto the podcast, that she and I had a conversation afterwards. I feel like this is real timely because of coming off the holidays. She's like, sometimes I like to talk about it as if, like, you know, when you go on vacation, you eat all that yummy food and you just keep packing it in and packing it in and packing it in. Like, it's got to come out at some point. And if you just keep packing it in. Now, to be clear, she gave like a 12-minute, like, beautiful, like, story around it. But that, like, really shifted. She was one of many, many people we talked to that has shifted my work around avoidance pretty dramatically, of like, no, you don't avoid it. It's still there. It's just taken a different form. And don't be naive about that. I mean, I have that quote, her quoted, I feel like anytime I talk about our work on elephants. So T. Maxine Woods McMillan, we love you.
Yeah, I'm ready to go to the next one. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. I'm ready. All right.
You ready? You want to do the next one, or Nick, you want to do one? Here, kick us off, Nick.
I'll do one. See, I feel like this has. I listen to too many baseball podcasts because I feel like this is like a draft. Like we're drafting my favorite. You know, like Andy took Maxine off the board right off the bat, and it's like, man, okay, I got to go to my draft board here. No, but I guess. Man, yeah, I haven't decided who I want to go. Okay, I'm going to go to Dr. Tina Opie because that was just a fantastic conversation. This is one of them that, like, going back, and I did a little bit about, you know, going back and reflecting and re-listening to, you know, portions of some of these that have been a little while. And man, that it's just that whole conversation. There are a few highlights that I had written down. One that I know, Sarah, you still bring up that we mention or think about a lot is the idea of bias being like a bird flying through your mind. Mm-hmm. And the idea is, you know, see it, let it fly through, recognize it for what it is, but don't let it nest. Yeah. The idea of don't let that bird nest in your mind is such a brilliant way of, I just feel like she had a handful of these things that were just brilliant, similar to Maxine. It's like just the way that she worded some of these things that maybe are, you know, familiar concepts or things that you think about, but putting it in that language and giving that kind of the visual kind of, you know, imagination of that bird flying through your mind, I just thought was a really powerful thing. And like I said, I know it's something that we've come back to over and over again. The other things that I wrote down from that conversation, if you have power, use it. And then this idea of, you know, if we increase the pie, then everybody gets more. Basic, the idea of like equity and like the kind of fighting that scarcity mindset, or feeling like, you know, if we try to, you know, give this group over here or these people, you know, something, then it's taking away from me. If I'm a person, you know, in a group that has status or power or whatever, you know, something for, you know, the purpose of equity feels like it's taking something away from me, instead of looking at it as the, you know, increasing what we all have, you know, like it's going to make us better. You know, if it's an organization that you're talking about, you know, broadening things, having more people have more opportunities, having more people's voices heard, what have you, is going to increase and better the things for everyone. Just a really, I feel like that whole conversation in terms of it's everyone's job, kind of. Everyone has a part to play. Everybody's got a responsibility to take part actively in like creating equity and being using the power that you have. So if you are a person who has power or status based on whatever it is, whether it's positional power or based on, you know, the group that you belong to or whatever it is, recognizing what power you have to and using that power to better things, ideally for everyone.
Yeah.
So.
Because it can be so challenging, can feel so risky to speak up, to step out, to do whatever, and realizing, well, I'm thinking again as like a white person, it feels risky, but the risk is very low. It's very different for us. And so like, how do we step into that more? Well, and yeah, the whole bias is like a bird, just don't let it nest. That not only just that idea of bias, the time when we interviewed her was when I was just figuring out that I had OCD. And that phrase was such a powerful visual for my intrusive thoughts too. Was like, there it is. I don't need to let it nest. So Dr. Tina Opie, know that was a real gift to me in a pretty hard time that I was going through. One of the other things, well, gosh, there was so much, but I remember one of the things I just really appreciated is her willingness to push back or to, on me. And when we were talking about this idea of people struggling with the concept of privilege, and like that some people, particularly those who may be of like dominant identities, right? So, white, male, heterosexual, Christian, right? And how it's like, well, yeah, but I had to suffer too. And I always struggled to be able to articulate to people, yeah, you did. This isn't minimizing it. And then she pushed me and she said, but you didn't struggle because you were white. And that was such an important moment of her calling that out so clearly. And like not only articulating it for other people, but also for myself to be like, right, yeah, we didn't grow up with a ton of money. Our challenges had nothing to do with the color of her skin. And then the other thing that she said was, I think I was talking about how like we're so conditioned. I was so conditioned that your goal was to be liked. And she was like, not being liked is just another Thursday to me. I want to be respected. And it was just like, right. Yep.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. That was a big fangirl like interview for me too, because I just loved her book so much. Shared Sisterhood.
Yeah. That was a really good one. A lot of that stuck with me.
Yeah. Okay. Do I get to go next?
Yes.
Are we doing the rotation? Are we doing counterclockwise?
Oh, is it a snake draft? Do we have to? So you get the third pick in the first round and the first pick in the second round? I don't know. We didn't really establish the rules up front.
I think my team was terrible, so I get like, no, I don't.
Yeah, you had the worst record last season, so you get a bonus pick in this round.
Okay. I mean, yeah. All right. So here's who I'm gonna go with next that I think is on theme for what we've been talking about was Elaine Lynn Herring on Unlearning Silence. That is one that I've gone back and listened to. I have gone back and reread her book. I think I recommend every time I'm in a group of humans to buy that book when it comes out in March. So here is your next like promotional push. Pre-order Elaine Lynn Herring's book Unlearning Silence. And I had like so many pages of notes, but again, talking about the power of language, thinking about so much of the work that we do is about helping people have the conversations that matter. And I would use the term avoidance. Even the book title of Don't Feed the Elephants is Overcoming the Art of Avoidance, right? It's to be kind of kitschy, clever. But I love that idea of silence. And how are we silencing ourselves? And more importantly, how are you silencing other people? That was so powerful for me because, when I think about my work with my coach, Stephanie Chin, helping me become a more inclusive leader, that's a conversation we've had before of like, as a woman of color, as an Asian woman, when she's in our spaces where it's largely white women, she feels silenced. And some of it isn't necessarily us silencing right? Some of it can be and is, but some of it is like self-silencing because it's like it's too big of a risk for me to speak up. And they're just like that conversation connected a lot of dots for me about other conversations and just even thinking about that idea of voice. How do I give voice to more people? And also how do I step into my voice more? But that, yeah, that whole idea of like the whole thing of silence still is just like seared on my heart.
That was one of mine
that
too.
Feels like,
yeah.
I was going to say that feels like another one. You know, you talked a little bit ago about the conversations impacting your work. And I feel like that's one that inevitably is going to continue to impact the work, you know, especially like you said, talking about avoidance, talking about the elephants. And it is such a natural kind of progression or even just a different way of reframing that idea, you know, using different language. But yeah, I feel like that's something it's something I had reflected on as I was going through all of these different ones and kind of realizing how much because I get to see, you know, I guess for the listeners, if people don't know,
they don't know.
I, you know, part of my other job is that I am involved in the, you know, virtual workshops and things, keynotes that Sarah does. And so I get a little glimpse into, you know, the work as it's being done with different groups and teams, and seeing the way that the conversations that you've had on this show, on this podcast with various people and various different topics have impacted that work. It's a pretty cool thing. I mean, it's, you know, there are a whole variety of reasons I think that you have a podcast, that you want to have these conversations that, you know, that drive the desire to do this show. But I think that's a pretty cool side effect of doing all this, that it's evolving and growing the work that you're doing too.
Yeah, because because the mark that every guest brings grows and evolves us as people, you know, that it isn't how do we like steal their stuff? Because I mean, to be honest, like sometimes that happens, which is why I will say I'm super passionate about making sure I quote people, making sure that it's like, you need to know that this came from this person, buy this person's books. And now I'm also just reflecting, like, what are other ways I can give back? Because I feel like, I think like often I'm on some of the episodes and I'm like, I feel like I should send you money, like invoice me for the therapy you just gave me. And, you know, and also I think that's important to state also just for potential past guests that have been on the show, is understand how significant your ripple has been, right? Understand that you showing up and sharing your gifts and your wisdom has such a huge impact, not just on listeners, but it creates this ripple impact, right? Like Andy, you talked about like, oh yeah, I quoted this person and then I'm like telling them at work, and it's this huge, huge ripple effect. I also just want to say, this is also why it's really important to be in conversations with people who are different than you, people who have different lived experiences, people who have different perspectives and expertise, because like I know my world really well, but that means there's a whole lot of the world I don't know. And hopefully that's something that the listeners benefit from as well. Yeah. Unlearning Silence. Elaine Lynn Herring, March 2024.
That was a really good one. There was the multi-pronged approach to silence, and you know the good definitions and the bad definitions, and how we can give that as gifts to people when we're in, you know, intimate conversations. Remind me, was that the episode where somebody mentioned like waiting for the question mark? Was that hers, or was that a different one? It was a more recent one.
Say more about it and it'll trigger something.
It was letting a conversation, especially from the standpoint of a leader, is to let the other person speak. You know, there's no need to inject yourself. There's no need to like control a situation and wait for your question mark, or wait for the person to say a question mark. And maybe it wasn't even on the show, but I feel like that's something that came up recently. But anyway, so there's that. Wait for the question mark.
Okay, that was episode 80. Drew Noll, everyone. Let's talk about that quote.
Great guest.
Live. It's happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great stuff around the silence. And that was another one where, I'd be here and I'd be mixing it, and then I would just zone out and then realize that the time, the cursor's 3 minutes into the thing. I was like, I got to get back and work on that because I'm just sitting and digesting it for so long. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elaine.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Elaine. Oh, yeah. We should thank people. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Maxine. Thanks. Okay. You're up, Drew. Round draft pick.
We should probably abandon the draft.
I was ready to abandon it as soon as you mentioned it, but no, I'm just kidding.
That's fair.
I wasn't. No.
That's just
Speaking
my
of
mindset.
silence, right? Episode 62, Jen Fisher.
Oh, yeah.
Human sustainability has completely changed literally every relationship that I have. Personal, work, my own marriage, my son, and really putting the energy and the chips into not what we do, but really how we do it. And really, truly the deepest user experience of the folks around us. And from a management standpoint, it's nice to have people want to stick around and continue to work with you, right? And so that's been a huge thing for my job, and hearing the folks that I work with and hearing them use that terminology too of human sustainability, and like, how are you? Like, how are you doing this work? What can we do as a team or as coworkers to make your experience more fulfilling or safe or whatever the spectrum is, right? But it's just, it yields human sustainability and wanting to maintain what you have in a positive and impactful way. Huge for me. Life-changing.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, I remember first hearing about that phrase and being like, oh, that feels real technical and transactional. And then it's just like, but it's a way to tap into people who might not think about it otherwise. It's a way of tapping into, thinking about it much more broadly. It makes me think about our conversations as a team just today. And Teresa was like, you just got to understand most companies are designed to eat your soul. And so and then we were talking about some changes we're making. She's like, can we just celebrate that our company has not eaten any of our souls yet? Like we should feel pretty good about this. But yeah, that idea of sustainability that was really interesting.
It's fun and exciting too, because it's not just this happens, you respond in this way, and then this is the end result, right? So maybe at a high level, but the fact that it's the differences between each person and what feeds each person and keeps them going and brings that joy for them is really what makes it most exciting for me. And really learning how to do what I can to support other people to get them to a place of whatever that is that yields. But there's no rule, right? You can't follow. There's no instructions for it. It takes really, really intentional work and a lot of trust and commitment. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen. I feel like we all have to thank everyone. I don't want to be left out of the thanking.
Well, and then I feel like at the end we just need to pull up the list of everyone. Maybe I can do that on we should actually. I can bring it up on the phone. I'll do it when we get to that point. Nick, you're up.
Oh, great. Yeah. I have to talk about Dr. Jason Frischman and the conversation on men and men's mental health. There were a number of things in that conversation that stuck with me and that resonated really strongly for me. As Sarah mentioned, and as some listeners might remember, we had a conversation previously about our, being supporting one another as partners in our various mental health challenges. It's a refreshing thing just to hear anyone talk about, honestly, because it is still, there are challenges that are all around and that are built into how men view themselves, how we're expected to be. There's just a lot. There's a lot that we learn through, our whole upbringing from the time that we're born, whether we want to or not. And it is, his discussion of a couple different things. One, he talked about the hero's journey as being this kind of dominant, he called it an omnipresent cultural story. And the idea that story is sort of the only acceptable, thing for men to kind of strive for, as like that. This is how your life should. This is what you should be, seeking, is to like go achieve this epic thing, and that by doing some thing and achieving, that is what kind of gives your life meaning. And the idea that being such a dominant cultural story is suppressing and silencing other stories. And that language it has stuck with me, and it's something I had never thought about. But the idea that like he made the comparison or the comment that, it's celebrating going out and doing the epic thing. It's denigrating, staying home and doing the dishes, other examples of like, there are any number of ways that we might find meaning as individuals, but the fact that there's this expectation or this kind of cultural norm around like particularly for men, what is kind of expected, what you're expected to be, how you're expected to be, the expectation of having the drive to go and achieve some epic thing. It was really powerful for me. It really hit home with a lot of the things that I've kind of had to untangle and continue to work through, in my own mental health, and kind of trying to scrape away the, societal expectations, gender norms, all of those things. Just that whole conversation, but that was one piece of it that really stuck out for me, was the idea of that story that we're kind of told in so many forms, and that it's just everywhere. And what stories don't we hear, or, don't we see as even like potentially viable options for how to be.
Yeah. And the list of the things to not do is equally long, if not longer too. Yeah. So I'm learning that that's a big deal. And it's been beneficial for my relationship with you, Nick. Right. And so we've gotten really close, and I feel like we were able to share a lot of stuff. So I'm grateful for that.
You can lean into it, boys. You can lean into it. It's okay.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. No, I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's, and he said how many of the guys he works with wouldn't have anyone if something happened to is particularly in like heterosexual relationships, that they wouldn't have anyone if something happened to their wife, which is so sad to me, because like I feel like I have this incredible community of particularly amazing women, and there's such a cost to the expectations of what it is to be a man to men.
Yeah, I think that might have been another, I might be remembering this wrong, but I feel like there's another comment that he made about something along the lines of like the patriarchy doesn't help anyone, or it's hurting all of us, it's hurting men too. Like, a lot of times you hear people, the kind of talking about the patriarchy, and rightly so, is, tilted towards or mostly referring to kind of the way that women have been, held down or oppressed or less than. But it's also true that nobody's benefiting from it. It is harming men to behave or to, view themselves in this kind of restricted way. it's really difficult. There's so much kind of built into, you get it whether you want it or not. The messages of, what it means to be a man. And, it's, that was a good one. I feel like I'm due to go back and re-listen to that whole episode at some point, because there's a lot that really stuck with me.
It'd be really neat. It'd be really neat. I think we've talked about, like, get Nick Papadopoulos back on, get Dr. Frischman, like have a bunch of guys just having a conversation about this and just talking about those challenges. It's it was interesting. I was on a show. What's the Deal? DEIL, like today, and we were talking about why do we think it's so difficult for organizations to make a shift towards a more human perspective, and there's no one answer to that. Obviously, capitalism wasn't meant for fulfilling people's, I don't know, best selves as humans, but one of the things that I hypothesized is you largely have white men in power who have been conditioned to not know how to nurture and be in relationship with other people, and to be the hero, to be the, like independent, we don't, in America anyway, most American culture, I won't say all, is very like individual, not communal, right? Like all of that stuff. And it is, both of those episodes were so good. Thanks, Dr. Frischman.
Thank you, Dr.
Thanks,
Frischman.
Jason.
Thank you, Dr. Frischman.
Okay, it's my turn. Where do I go? Okay, one actually came up that I didn't originally have on my list, but came up when Andy, you were talking about Jen Fisher, and that's
Andy's another thing that we call Drew.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Drew.
I'm bound to do it at some point too.
I'm part of the inner circle. It's just how I knew him when he was born. I wasn't there when he was born. I came after he was born.
Yeah, this is all getting very confusing. Conversations on Conversations lore. Sarah is a time traveler.
Caroline Donnelly talking about burnout.
Oh.
And one of the things Nick, you and I still like have moments of practicing this.
Yep, this is on my list too.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Should I talk about it, or should you talk about it? Okay, add to it. But one of the things she said is, when people go to the weekend, we ask them, "What are you doing? What activity are you doing? What are you keeping yourself busy with? What tasks? What?" And we don't ask, like, how are you going to be this weekend? And that was so profound. Andy, when you were talking about like Jen Fisher, I was like, oh yeah, right. Because that is something when Nick and I have gone on trips, how do we want to be? Or we try to catch it on the weekends. It's like, how do we want to be this weekend? We want to be connected. We want to be rested. We want to, move with ease, or whatever the case is. But that was such I've heard the whole being doing before, right? Like, we're not human doings, we're human beings. I hear that a lot. It's kind of in one ear, out the other, because I've heard it so much. And how she said that, of like the positioning of that kind of similar phrase. And to be clear, I don't want to discredit, because I know that was really resonant for you, Nick. Mm-hmm. We're not human doings, we're human beings. So I don't want to dismiss or minimize. That was something that I was familiar with, so it didn't resonate for me in the same way as you. So her then like applying it in that really like consistent thing we do. Oh, what are you doing this weekend? I just asked it today to somebody. Oh, what are you doing for Christmas? Instead of like, how do you want to be? So that's one. What do you want to add, Nick?
No, that was I had that exact same thing written down, and was thinking about that same thing. Like you said, it's changed the way that we talk to each other. And the idea that one of the things that she said, I wrote down a quote that she said, which is, if you're not doing something, then it is like a mark on your worth. And I remember being just struck by that, because it is, it's just baked into the question. What are you doing? What are you up to this weekend? What do you got going on? Like, we have to have something going on, or we're like if we're just existing, we're not creating, value somehow. And so, it's a really powerful reframe. And I catch myself doing it all the time. I think just, because it is such a default, but we don't have to always be doing things to be, to have worth.
Hearing her say the how phrase there was like a Neo in the Matrix event for me, where you hear the sentence and you download it and you're like, I know Kung Fu. It like opens up this whole other part of, whatever. That was pretty impactful for me too.
Yeah. Yeah, we've adopted that. Not always, but we often, or I find myself catching myself with us in particular, like, oh, how are we going to be this weekend? How do we, Yeah.
It's not like necessarily that it's like a destructive question to ask in and of itself, but it's just a default question, realizing how, because that is like, such a default and such a like standard question, you realize how much we just undervalue, like, the fact that we can exist, we can have time where we rest and recharge, or we, just are being, and it doesn't always have to be, we don't have to have a project.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love not having projects. That's one of my favorite pastimes.
I'm pro that some of the time for me. And that is not, it's just, that's just my brain.
Yeah.
It's just my brain likes to need some, I need a different level of stimulation in my being, not necessarily like, because I don't finish most of my projects I start. I just want to think about projects, actually, is what I want to do. All right, Drew.
Well, thanks. Thank you, Caroline Donnelly.
Thank you, Caroline.
Episode number 71. Is it Katrina Jones? Katrina
Jones.
I think
she's
this
great.
is her quote. There were a few great ones in that. But I wrote this down, and I actually wrote the little quotes, and I said, it's hard to sustain uniqueness when conformity is what's rewarded. Whoa. Yeah. Wow.
I can't remember if that was her or not. I assume, but that's a good one.
Katrina, if it's not yours, I'm sorry, but you are amazing.
I can't remember if it was her or Elaine. Say it again. Say that quote again, because I do remember that one.
There's two parts of it. So that was the main focus, which is it's hard to sustain uniqueness when conformity is what's rewarded. Yeah. And another part of that, and I don't know what the order was, but I think her example is when joining an organization or joining a project, or seeing how a group of people or leadership or enterprise or whatever it is articulate and manage their teams or projects or whatever, how they say things and how they run and lead their teams celebrates how it's worked in the past, and how that may not be something that's going on here. So the whole concept of like celebrating something with the words and how we say them, and what we're carrying forward or changing, and that intentionality was just like a really cool concept. Like, what are you celebrating by saying that? It's like, wow, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a concept that like is easy. Well, we'll say, your culture is what you do, don't do, say, don't say, what you celebrate and what you tolerate. And like, the conformity being rewarded. What's interesting is though, like, actually maybe it's the same thing. Like, we were talking with our friend Dave, who lives out in LA, and and he was like, if you're not loud and unique, you don't get attention. But on some level, that's the conformity of that culture and system out there as well. Like, she's so great, and we've had her on twice, and she always just like, I always appreciate her honesty and vulnerability. I mean, she spoke so
so tenderly and also candidly about her recent divorce in a way that I think we don't often talk about, you know. I know that was something Nick and I talked about, of like, oof, that had to have been hard.
Yeah.
And
I had a note about Katrina, that exact thing about her. There are a couple of them that I marked down, whether it was a specific quote or something that I wanted to talk about, but just the fact that it was such a vulnerable like share and vulnerable conversation, and just courage to, you know, be willing to share about things that are personal. Katrina was one. Neha was another one that, you know, I'm going to start dropping some of these because I know we're not going to have a chance to talk about all of them, but Neha was another one. It was like just Neha's such a, just giving such an amazing kind of glimpse into, you know, her struggles and what she goes through. And it's, you know, just kind of eye-opening to hear other people's perspectives and to try and, you know, understand some portion of what people are going through. And it takes people being open and honest and sharing vulnerably about those things in order for us to hear it.
Yeah. That was a great one.
So thank you, Katrina and
Neha.
Thank
you, Katrina. Thanks, Katrina. And Neha. Katrina Jones, Neha Sampat. Whose turn is it?
I've forgotten whose turn it is. I don't remember where we started this one.
Or Drew just went.
Andy Rue.
Oh, is it my turn then?
Yeah,
I think so. I'm just smiling a little bit, going like, this is going to be a short episode.
Yeah, I know you thought that. Yeah. Okay, so now I have to pick who. Okay, which one? Because this is going to be last,
do we
right?
have to? Oh, is it last?
We're coming up on an hour.
Yeah, we're
right?
coming up in an hour.
We should probably wrap things up. That's the producer slash guest in me. That's, you know. Well, I'll go to what to me is another like powerhouse guest and episode of just going reflecting on like the whole conversation, which is Beth Shelton.
Yeah,
talking
I had her
about
on my list too.
Her experience and her take on leadership and like bold decision making. And, you know, honestly, like most of the conversations and the topics that really resonate for me personally, because I've never been in like a corporate world environment. I've been, I guess, fortunate to have existed outside of that kind of framework.
In the house, never having to see light.
Yeah, I love that.
Not being fed after midnight.
I am sort of a mogwai of sorts. But because of that, like a lot of the conversation topics that revolve around kind of workplace culture and leadership and those things maybe aren't as resonant for me personally as like, you know, things like mental health or things that are more applicable or feel more applicable to kind of personal challenges for me or what have you. That said, listening to Beth Shelton talk about leadership, I mean, I would follow her. I came away from that just thinking, if everyone in a position of power and authority and everyone who gets to make decisions that impact other people could be more like Beth Shelton, I think, you know, we'd be in a lot better shape just overall, right? Beth Shelton for president, basically.
Oh man, I would give all of my money to see her run for office.
Just amazing. A couple things that I had noted specifically. We start with reasons not to adopt a radical idea, and her kind of flipping the script and saying, what if we had to do it this way?
Oh yeah.
To really push people to say like, okay, it's easy. It's the default to say like, no, that'll never work. You know, this thing that you're bringing, this is too far out there. We can't do it because X, Y, Z, instead of saying, okay, scratch all that. Pretend for a minute, you know, we have to do it this way. How would we do it? And like open yourself up to, you know, that ideating process of like, okay, well, let's force ourselves to consider this. And, you know, what do you know? Maybe there's a way. Maybe this actually does make sense.
Yeah. What was also so powerful about that is that it wasn't her asking people to think about that for an idea she was advocating for. Someone on the team brought up the idea of the babies at work, and she initially pushed against it herself. Right. And I love when we get to see people talk about, oh yeah, no, I was like resistant to it. And then I started to interrogate my thinking and invited others to do the same. And that was part that was so powerful for me, that it wasn't an idea. It wasn't her pet project.
Right.
It wasn't her passion. She actually was resistant to it, and then got pushed herself, and then pushed other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple other just notes that I had on that conversation. Empathy is not the opposite of accountability.
Yeah.
That was a really powerful kind of way of phrasing, because you've talked about many times the idea that, leaders or people that have come to you with this concern that maybe I'm going to be too empathetic. Can't you be too empathetic? Isn't that a danger of being too empathetic? And her kind of pushing back on that to say that, you can be empathetic and also hold people accountable. And those two things are not at odds. And I think that there is a tendency to think that they are. And then the last thing I had noted was that the idea of fix the culture, don't delete the word. And she talked about, they would do something like word clouds, where people talked or gave their, words to describe maybe the culture or the workplace, and that it could be easy to look at that and see a word on there and think, well, I don't like that that's on there. And could be easy to say, well, I'm going to just want to take that out, delete that word because that doesn't feel good. But her, realization or talking about fix the culture, there's a reason that word is on there.
Yeah.
So taking the word off of there doesn't make it, it's the thing that you talk about, Sarah, about like the words on the wall. You know, if you want to say that we have this kind of a culture and, whatever it is, this workplace, this, family, or whatever group or whatever kind of, relationships, if you want to, think of yourselves and put yourselves out there as having this certain kind of culture, you can talk about that. But if you're not, if that's not how it's actually playing out, then that's the reality. People are living in the reality, and you have to, address it as such.
Yeah. Yeah, which requires like reflecting on the role you play. This wasn't in her interview, but I want to give a shout out to Natalie Norfus, who was on the show. And I was on her show today, and we were talking about how easy it is for people to just, like in a situation like that, to blame the team members or whatever. And she's like, no, they're disengaged because of your actions. They're disengaged because of what you are doing. That's why they're disengaged, and just that idea. Yeah. I had her on my list. She was great.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have to
thank
pick
you, Beth Shelton.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. Thank you.
Beth.
Thank you. I just get one. I'm going to do a quick honorable mention.
I like that you're like appealing to us to change rules of this. This is your show. You tell us if
I'm in
you've got
so much
5
pain
more
right
rounds
now.
of this draft and we just don't know about it.
Okay. 2 quick shout outs and then I'll give my final.
We do a lightning round.
Do a lightning round. Here, 2 lightning rounds and then a deeper dive.
Okay.
Jeff Anderson, our friend from Moose Jaw. I love the story he shared about the individual who was like, I don't like coming into work, and it's largely because of you. And his role modeling of how easy it could have been for him to be like, well, screw you. I'm the CEO. And he got really curious. So I just want to give a shout out to that, because I love seeing when people who not only have positional authority, but also have identity authority, role model for the rest of us what it looks like to be pushed, what it looks like to be intellectually humble, what it looks like to take ownership for your impact. So that's one shout out.
Add that to the list too of, vulnerable share. I mean,
vulnerable shares. Yeah.
Being willing to say like, this is a thing that happened. This is not a flattering thing for him to share about his, but the fact that he was able to reflect on it and, use it to move forward.
Yeah. Jacquette Timmons, her first one in particular on our relationship with finances is one that I feel like every time I go back to, like, oh yeah, then there was this. But and part of it is just where I'm at in my life and reflecting on things, but you know, a healthy relationship with finances, you have a healthy relationship with finances when it evolves and changes, and just how applicable that is to all relationships, right? You should never have the same kind of relationship. Nick, you and I don't have the same kind of relationship we did when we were 19. Andy, we don't have the same relationship when I was born, right? Like, because I came after him.
After me?
If you picked that up from did you? What?
Yeah, that's why I said I couldn't remember if it was before or after me.
We're so close. Okay, but the one that I have to say, and this is for me personally, that the most I don't want to say important, because they were all important, but personally special, I will say, was Dr. Winston and Dr. Seif, who we just had talking about anxiety, talking about OCD. And if you heard on the show, it was really special because honestly, their books helped me through an incredibly challenging time. And there were so many, I don't even remember how Dr. Winston talked about the termites, but I just remember being like, that was a brilliant.
I was hoping I could.
Do you have it?
No,
Okay, I'm not going to say it. You can talk about it as a tag on to me, and then you can get like another choice in your draft. So I don't want you to feel like
I was hoping for the lightning round, and I was just going to say termites. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
And it's the thought that I don't know if it was like the intrusive thought or like the consideration, like, well, I know that termites exist, and I know that termites could eat wood. And I have a living room full of wood. There's a possibility that termites could be eating the wood away from my living room. And so because of that possibility, I'm not going to sit on the couch because I might fall through the floor. And so it's that weight of the more you think about it, the more the weight of the compulsiveness or whatever it is. I forget the terms that he used for that. But yeah, termites
it's like
for sure.
Constructing a narrative from, I think she maybe referred to them as irrelevant facts or like unimportant facts. It's like, yes, it's a fact that termites can, termites eat wood. It's a fact that, all of these things are true facts. And, by putting them together, you can construct this idea that like you need to be worried about blank.
Yeah. And it's so true and real, like a fact. Like the sum of it all is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was, and that idea that an anxious mind likes the invisible, right? Like especially the OCD mind, because it can never be certain. And that's what drives our brain crazy. And that's what creates the loop. And there was just something about that. And also the other thing, and I don't remember which of the two said it, but just this idea of when you're in a really heightened anxious state, you really are in an altered sense of consciousness. Like you aren't operating on all cylinders. And there's, again, that's another one, like buy their books, needing to know for sure, right? Intrusive. And even just their thoughtfulness about, we didn't put OCD in the book because we knew people wouldn't understand that what they were experiencing was OCD. It was just like, so, oh shit, I found your book not because I was looking for books on OCD. I found their book because I was looking for books on intrusive thinking, and like just how brilliant that was. But there was so much that was so special, just special for me, and a bit of a like moonshot guest for us, which I'm hoping we can do more of that next year. But that's one that I have to honor as being personally really, really healing for my heart to have them on and to be able to tell them how much their work impacted me. Mm-hmm. And I've had multiple people reach out and were like, I've bought their books. This made so much sense. Thank you for normalizing it. Like that's probably the episode I've heard the most from people. Because so many people suffer in silence. So that's my final gold star.
That is a good one. Thank you, Dr. Winston.
Thank you,
Dr. Seif.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Drew.
There are a handful of guests that talked about this, but the everything that came up around working hybrid and transitioning in and out of that and the benefits of it and the just the studies that are out there and ways to prepare yourself for those difficult conversations, either with your team or with your leadership around like the benefits or just in general, like working hybrid. It was so great to hear other people talk about it. It's like, oh yeah, this is totally doable. And here's why. And there were quite a few guests that brought that up. And even if that wasn't the focus of the conversation, it was just inserted because it's such an important topic right now.
Yeah.
Because of human sustainability. That's going back to that. Thanks again.
It all comes back to the humans. How do we be and not do? Any others that we want to? I mean, there's so many. Like,
have we talked about T-Maxine at all? Could we?
I don't know that we've mentioned.
So good.
What was it that she said again?
I have one. This is lightning round. In going back to. This one was a while ago, so I had kind of forgotten a lot of the conversation. But when you talked to Jomara Villanova Mitchell about the conversation was about leadership burnout, and again, maybe a lot of those sorts of things don't feel as applicable to me and don't maybe resonate for me the same way. But there was a line that she said that definitely stuck with me, which was, when you numb fear and sadness, you also numb joy.
Oh God!
This idea of you can't pick and choose the emotions and the feelings that you have. Yeah. And that, again, it was in relation to kind of workplace and leadership and these things. But to me, it felt like she was able to kind of create this like one sentence explanation of like, again, going back to Dr. Frischman and harmful gender norms, specifically as a man, feelings that you're not supposed to express or have, and the kind of limited box that we try to be in, and that idea of you can't do that. You're if you're numbing all of these, if you're trying to numb fear, sadness, these kind of scary or bad, what we consider negative emotions, that is, you're numbing everything, and next thing you know, you're a depressed person. You're numbed all of your feelings, and that's how it happens. So just.
That's a pretty good one to end on.
It was. I thought it was a great one. I had to mention that one.
Yeah.
We love Jill Mata.
We love Jill Mata.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jill Mata.
Thanks, Jill Mata.
Thank you.
I have so many Jill Mata-isms. I have just like list of like, yep, I've got my Stephanie-isms. I've just got my growing list. All right, so let's do a quick thank you, Allison Pete, our newest one. Going through the ones, thank you, Tamsin Webster. Kai Gillespie. You want to get in? Are we just going to go through it?
Bring up something for everyone.
Every story is a question.
Tamsin? Yeah.
Sorry, you can keep going. That's it.
Yeah,
thanks,
okay,
Tamsin.
I'm going to skip the ones we've already thanked. Thank you, Danita High, talking about creating a coaching culture. Brandon Springle, which can we just give a shout out to Brandon, talking about psychological safety. His energy was so grounding. Like I just love talking to that guy. He's one of my favorite people. Leading people, Robert Seeger. Thank you, Robert. Kai Matkovich, we talked about apologizing.
That's a good one.
UV Dockhorn. Thank you, UV. Oh, we haven't talked about our friend up in Canada who works in hospice. And I know we don't. Do you have her on your
Janice?
Or do you have?
I do. It's written so deep into my DNA, that episode, that I forgot to bring it up because I feel like it came from me. It's so part of me now. The concept of all of that, and the depth and the relationships that we have with it. And sorry. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Well, what? Yeah. Janice Chabanik, I think is how you say it. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Teresa Peterson, Michelle Loveday. Look at all these amazing people. My good friend, Farah Harris.
I feel like we've done a disservice by not talking about Farah too. Farah, we love you. And we
love you so much.
I did have notes about Farah's conversation.
You know what part of it is because like she and I are in conversation so much. I don't think of it as like, a standalone thing, but let's just like call out the work of like her work around rethinking emotional intelligence, and particularly giving light to the fact that it isn't always this lovely thing. And often, especially for people who are underrepresented or oppressed, it's a form of survival. Like that. Yeah. It's interesting because so much of what we talked, I was like, yeah, it's things that she and I've talked a lot about. She's written about. Yeah. Farah, you're awesome. And then her episode last year about boundaries, that the people who won't honor your boundaries have no problem in like putting theirs on you. Kristen Harcourt, Kristen Souter talking about ADHD, Sam Eaton, Kirsten Anderson, Ryan Dunlap. Oh, I forgot about Ryan. That was a moonshot. I didn't forget about, but like, he's so great. Andre Young, and then T. Maxine Woods McMillan. Let's see, who kicked us off? Jaquette, Nola Simon, Liz Neat. Oh yeah, I forgot we had Liz on.
Liz was another like, amazing, vulnerable share.
Yeah.
Again, just the people are amazing when they are willing to come and share things that are, really challenging, things that are real in their life. And Liz was another one of those.
And to show up when she knows that like how she shows up is different than how she showed up before her heart and brain. Just all of her challenges she had. Julie Turney, Dr. Nika White is always a classic. And then we started with Lou Diamond. So thank you all so much for everyone who's been willing to give their time and talents. I also want to take a moment as we're wrapping up this to thank everyone who listens to the show. We have grown. We are growing. We have well over 16,000 downloads. We're in almost 70 countries, which is incredible. And I'll just do one more invitation. We love hearing from people. And so we are taking a pretty long, we're taking, some time off at the end of the year and during our holiday season. But if there are topics you want us to explore, I know that there's some topics that have been on our list of like that we want to find some guests to speak to. Let us know. You can always send us an email at podcast@sarahnollwilson.com. Also, who has stuck out for you? Who are people that made you stop and go, oh, I hadn't thought about that? We would love to hear it. And more importantly, be able to give those people their flowers. Hey, and let's do a final thank you to the two of you. Who knew when we started this little show that my goal was like, can we get to 25? Can we get to 50? And now it's like, yeah, we're at 80 and we'll hit 100 and then we'll go on to there. So thank you, Nick, for being the ever-present partner in my life, on screen and off screen and behind the camera, and keeping on top of stuff. And Drew for, just helping us make the show as professional as we can because of your skill. It's always fun to get your late night Sunday. Oh man, this. I'm always like, oh, this is a good one. Can't wait for you to hear it. And then we have some folks who couldn't make it tonight. So Becky Reinert, who is our transcriptionist, she has the fun of listening and making sure that the transcription is correct. She's also a sibling. Our marketing support, Jessica Burge, and obviously the whole SNOWCO crew. We couldn't do this work. So what else you want to say in our final moments, Nick and Drew? What do you want to say?
Thanks for listening. We make a show, and it would be less worthwhile and rewarding if people weren't listening to it. So
yeah,
we appreciate people listening.
I'm really looking forward to next year.
Yeah, can keep amping it up, keep ramping it up and finding great guests and probably hearing from a few familiars. I can't wait to send Maxine a text right now and be like, hey, you need to listen to next week's episode. And will you just record yourself listening to it?
And that'll be episode 81 is her.
A special episode where we just talk about you. Hope you don't mind.
I love it. Well, I love you guys. I'm so glad we get to do this work. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully those of you listening have had fun as well. So that is the wrap for 2023. Our guests this week have been the amazing 79 guests that have led up to this point. And our main guests who are actually talking is Nick Wilson and Drew Noll. And if you'd like to find out, I was going to do it in one shoot. Just keep it.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. No. And if you're with us this far and you haven't shut off, if you want to support the show, because we love your support, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platform. That's actually really necessary to help us be able to get into more algorithms, to get exposure, to be able to show up on lists. So if you haven't done that, please do that. Also, if you want to financially support the show, you can do so by going to Patreon and becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/conversations on conversations, where you'll get great swag and you help support the crew that makes this show possible. This has been Conversations on Conversations. Thank you all so much for listening. Remember, when we can change the conversations we have with ourselves and others, we can change the world. So, rest, rehydrate, celebrate, sleep, eat good food, hibernate, go in the sun, whatever you're going to do over the next, 6 weeks or so. And
however you want to be.
However you want to be. However you want to be. And we'll see you in 2024, my friends. That's the show.
Welcome to the end of the show. It's the end of the show. Bop, bop. Keep that in. I'll make a beat about it.
That is definitely going in.